Well, how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody doing good? Well, I'm super grateful that y'all guys are here. You could have been anywhere on a Tuesday night, but you decided to come to be here with us and worship and fellowship with us. And so my prayer is that it's a benefit to your heart, to your soul. And man, you're really blessed by the end of the night. So being a young adults minister for as long as I have, I've had interesting lunches and breakfasts with multiple people. But there's one that I can vividly remember that kind of stood out more than any other time that I've ever had lunch with somebody that it's been a little bit hard to shake. And let me explain why. So I had a young lady in my ministry, and this one guy from the local college. He was a senior, he was on the football team and things like that, and he really wanted to date her. So he enters the ministry, and I guess to impress her, decides to ask me out for breakfast. I'm like, bro, it don't work like that, right? So he asked me out for breakfast, and we go out to get breakfast. And he texts me in the morning, I text him in the morning, hey man, where we're gonna go, where we're gonna meet, IHOP, Denny's. I'm throwing out traditional breakfast places, and he throws me out nah, we're gonna meet at the cafeteria at my college. I'm like, okay, great. Now this cafeteria at one point was rated the worst, not just cafeteria of colleges in Houston. It was rated one of the worst kitchens in all of Houston. It was absolutely disgusting. So we're rolling in. I'm walking in. Smells a little strong, not food strong, but strong. And so I walk in and make myself, tell the ladies to make me a burrito. She makes me a burrito. He gets one as well. And so right before we pay, I'm pulling out my wallet to make it clear. I was watching TikTok today about women, on their first day, how they do, with the purse and all that. I didn't want anything. I typically like to pay for myself. So I pull out my wallet. I pull out my card because I'm going to pay for myself. And call it pride, call it what? I just didn't want him to pay for me. So we get there, we get to the moment where I'm about to, pay, and he goes, no, man, I got you. I'm like, say what? And again, like I mentioned, I don't like people pay for me. He's like, no, man, I got you. It's like, no, dude, I got it. I got myself. I got budget for things like this. Don't worry about it. He's like, no. Let me pay for it. I'm like, bro, I'm good. And he's saying, hey, man, I'm going to actually use my meal plan, pay for it that way. It's not costing me much because I'm on the football team. I said, dude, no, don't worry about it. Let me pay for it. And then he said this thing that has forever shook me. That's probably the first time I've heard anybody ever say it in a situation like this. He said, hey, no, Sly, let me bless you. He straight up Jesus juked me right then and there. He's like, let me bless you. Let me bless you. Don't steal this blessing from me. I've worked hard on this team, and man, the school's been faithful to me, and I've been faithful with this money. Man, let me bless you. Let me just offer this blessing to you for this breakfast. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, cool. And I let him buy my breakfast. But it just kind of always stuck to me the way he said it. Let me bless you. And I've had multiple people after that say that. I typically am the guy when people buy me gifts or buy me lunch, I'm like, no, let me pay for myself. No, let me bless you, okay? But that one moment, I guess is the first time just really stuck with me. I don't know about you, when you hear that word blessing, kind of what thoughts and things and ideas come to your mind. Again, we're from the South, right? So bless your heart. We hear that quite a bit, right? We've heard blessings. Man, y'all guys are, I don't know how old are y'all or native to social media, old school social media, right? But hashtag blessed, right? That was a thing, right? So much so it's this idea of blessing has overtaken our culture so much that New York Times wrote an article about that. And this is what they said just about the word bless or blessing. They said this: there's literally no other word that can simultaneously inspire such animosity and rapture. This is weird for them to say that. The word blessing for a lot of people causes weird feelings. I don't know about you. When you hear the word blessing, what do you think? What do you feel? Do you think of old Southern grandma, bless your heart? Or do you think of something completely different? People kind of showing off. Social media, when good things happen, right? They get the promotion, their dog learns a new trick, right? They'll kind of use that. What do you think of when you hear the word blessing? What does it do to your heart? And really, that's what we're going to kind of discover and talk about tonight. Because I believe it includes all those kind of promotions and engagements and all these different reasons why we use the word blessing. But I think it also means a whole lot more that because of our context and our culture and the way it's used, man, I think it loses its meaning some. It doesn't necessarily mean what we think it really means. And so that's what I really want to dive in tonight. Tonight we'll be looking really at who Jesus says are blessed and why that's important. And we're going to tackle this idea of blessing and blessed. That this is what passage we're going to look at tonight is historically what's been known as the Beatitudes. It's always been known as the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes are not only about being blessed by God, but also why God would bless you. And so I like to talk about points so you kind of know where I'm going. You can kind of track up and keep up with me. And I really got 2 points today. My 2 points are this: the blessed characteristics of the Beatitudes, and then we're going to also look at the blessed purpose of the Beatitudes. And those are our 2 points really that we're going to tackle and look at today. So if you have your Bibles, open up to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. If not, we're going to have some of it here up in the screen. But like I mentioned last week, Jesus just kind of appears out of nowhere. He just comes out of nowhere. Yes, we in Matthew, we do see kind of like the Christmas story. We see the genealogy. But then after that, we really don't see much of Jesus. Jesus then reappears and gets baptized really out of nowhere. You see him as a little baby, disappears and appears as a 30-year-old, right? Hey, 30 years, that's a lot of time. And then he appears out of nowhere, gets baptized, and then he disappears again. He goes into the wilderness. He's tempted by Satan. And then he comes out. And then when he begins to come out, he begins to do miracles, and now he's having people to follow him and follow his steps and begin to follow his teaching and what he's beginning to do. And what we talked about last week is that this Sermon on the Mount talks a lot about the way we should live and operate in our lives. And I wanted to make it abundantly clear, right? This is the main takeaway, right? That he has his disciples and then he teaches them. The only way to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ is to be a disciple of Jesus. Like you can't be doing the teachings, right, and then not be a disciple. A lot of people believe that if I just do the teachings and live this way, man, that makes me a disciple. And no, you need to be a disciple first to truly live the teachings out. Like I mentioned last week, your identity will determine your activity. Your identity will determine your activity. John Stott, who, man, greatly influenced me on the Sermon on the Mount. He's a DOG, a dead old guy, right? Like he's a great read. But what he said about the Sermon on the Mount, he said, only children can live out the Sermon on the Mount. Only children of God can live out the Sermon on the Mount. It'd be like this. It'd be like you coming and squatting and living in my home. You could live in my home, but that doesn't make you a child. That doesn't make you JJ. That doesn't make you Issa. That doesn't make you Reuben. It doesn't. It doesn't. But you know who are my children? Those 3 knuckleheads that I mentioned earlier. Like those are my children. And so same thing with Sermon on the Mount. You can do all those things, but it doesn't mean that you're a disciple. You need to be a disciple first, believe in Jesus, follow Jesus to begin to live this out. And so that's why we kind of ask that question, are you gathering to Jesus or not? And so this week, I'm just going to kind of let you know this is going to be a transition week. We're still going to be kind of looking at identity before we begin to look at activity. And we're going to kind of dive in. And so this is going to be kind of transition. You're going to look at some identity things and slowly move to activity. And here's the thing that why I'm making such a big deal about this identity thing. I think so many churches focus on activity. Like our church is so good, not talking bad about other churches, so I want to follow suit as kind of the new guy here on staff. But at the same time, it's just something that worries me. You have so many guys out there preaching from pulpits, talking about the way you should live your life and miss the most important thing. Do you know Jesus or not? Do you know Jesus? Do you follow Jesus or not? Who are you? And is you defined by Jesus, or is it defined by, man, I just want to do good? And I get it. It's easy. Man, many times they teach it, man, you do this and you get that. But what I'm wanting to communicate and what I want to get right is that, listen, you can't do all these different things to get that. But you begin to behave, act, and do these things because you are a follower of Jesus. So this is the time that Jesus begins to teach his disciples what we see here for the very first time. This is a sermon that he's beginning to preach to them. More than likely, what we're catching is snippets, little pieces and aspects of it, because it's more than likely probably an all-day affair. He probably preached to them all day long. And so we're going to dive into point number 1, the blessed characteristics of the Beatitudes. And what we see that the Beatitudes kind of divide in 2 parts. One part is like our attitude, right, towards God. The Beatitudes that are aimed towards God. Now, here's a couple things that I just want to teach you, right? I paid a lot of money for this in Bible college. And so here's just kind of some free Bible college lessons, right? Repetition is key. When you see something repeated over and over and over in the Bible, it's important. We know this, right? Like if you kept on hanging around with me and I kind of said, like, man, you know, it'd be nice to have a new car. Like, it'd be cool if someone gifted me a new car. Like, you know what we know what would really be nice, man, if I had a new car. You would get the idea, hey, I think Sly wants a new car. You would get the picture. You would begin to understand that. So here you see this idea, blessed, 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 blessed. I'm going to go ahead and throw another little fancy one out there. This also is an inclusio, right? Another way to say it's a word sandwich. Right? It starts off with blessed are ... and they will inherit the kingdom. And then it ends with blessed are ... they will inherit the kingdom. It's a word sandwich for you to consume, to understand, like this is important. And so this is it. And I'll tell you this, I know I'm making a big deal about repetition, this inclusio thing, word sandwiches and things like that. But here's why. Words are to be explored. Words are to be explored. Matthew used these words for a reason. He's writing a letter. He wants you to understand. He's writing this text and he wants you to understand. It's like when you kind of send that text to a crush, right, to a significant other, for the ones that are not married, right, for the ones that are kind of in that talking stage, right, like you're very detailed, right? I remember writing a letter for a girl that I crushed on one time, hand-wrote letter, right? I wanted to make sure that the eyes had little hearts, like I was very detailed and specific. Why? Because I wanted her to know that I wanted to hold her hand, but not like hold her hand like her brother or like when they're little, like I want to hold her hand like, yo, like, what's up, girl? Like this is what's up. This is why words are important and words are to be explored. This is the only time in the whole entire Bible where blessed is repeated this many times. This is special to the whole entire Bible. So before we dive in and begin to break down these Beatitudes then, what does bless mean? I think that's a very important point, a very good starting off point. What does bless mean? So I typed in that into my good friend Webster, and this is what Webster said. To pronounce words in a religious rite, to confer or to invoke a divine favor upon. Another way it said is to ask God to look favorably upon. Then I typed it into a theological dictionary, and this is a whole lot more simpler than that, but you'll see that a lot of the same ideas. It says this, to favorably approve. That's it. Like that's the idea. You see the same concept is for God to look favorably on someone or something. This is why when someone sneezes, what do we say? Bless you. Why? Because we want God to look and to approve of you, to say, hey, this person needs to be healed so they don't get everybody sick and I can come close to you again, right? Like that's exactly what that idea of bless you means. Or sometimes we sing songs like bless the Lord, oh my soul, or like I bless God, right? It means I approve of God. I favorably approve of God. So that's the idea. So this is what Jesus is trying to say. He's saying, blessed are the, right? These are the ones that God looks favorably upon. These are the ones that God approves. And there's a little formula that you'll see. The formula is pretty simple. You'll see a blessing, then you'll see who is being blessed, and then lastly, what they will receive as that blessing. And I'll tell you this is very countercultural for like our day and age, right? Because typically how are Christians defined? They're typically defined by what they're not. Like Christians are not kind. Christians are really mean. They're not accepting. It's always focused on the opposite, right? We're known by what we're not. But Jesus is here laying out saying, hey, listen, this is how you view yourself. This should be your identity, not the opposite. No, this is how you view yourself. Michael Ware, he was a former White House staffer, and this is what he said. The Christianity of too many young adults is built around proving what type of Christian we are not. This is not edifying. No. We need to focus on who we are. And these blessed points that we're going to talk about, these Beatitudes, is really going to focus on who you are. And here's the thing, guys. Like with these Beatitudes, you can't do this on your own. You can try to do this on your own. You can try to fake it until you make it. But here, the Beatitudes is supposed to open up our eyes and say, no, I need God. Culture will say, hey, no, listen, it depends on you, depends on your luck, what you do, your wealth. And really, ultimately, at the very end, maybe they'll include God, but more than likely, God's not included in the whole entire formula. But the heart of the Beatitudes is this: you need God to do any of these things. You can't do this on your own. So with that, let's just begin to jump in to verse 3. It says this: blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So he's basically breaking it down. He's saying this: these are the ones that God approves of. Who are they? He says, listen, they're the ones that are poor in spirit. So what does poor in spirit mean? Well, we've heard the same more than likely, right? Poor of health, right? I like to include myself in the poor of money, right? Like it means that spiritually they are poor. Like spiritually they are broke. They have nothing to their names spiritually. And God doesn't want us to give all our stuff away so we can be poor and say, hey, look, God, look how spiritual I am. No, that does not mean that at all. But are we spiritually poor? Do we realize that we have nothing to offer? For example, like when we look at a person who's poor, quote unquote, financially, right? We know they're poor because they typically will have no shame in asking for money. Shoot, by the end of this night, I will probably ask you for money. You got $1 I could borrow, right? That's that idea. But so to be spiritually poor is to have, as us having to ask the person who has all the things that we don't have and he has. And that person being God. That is God. God is the only one who can give to us because we are poor spiritually and he is spiritual. John chapter 4 says that. John chapter 4 says, hey, God is spirit and truth. God is spirit. And so it's for us to have this mentality saying, hey, God, may I have you? I have nothing. I have nothing to bring. I have nothing to offer. Could you please give me you? I need you. I need more of you. I can do nothing on my own. I can't save myself. God, I need you. It doesn't matter how many poor people you feed. It doesn't matter if you give away your riches or anything like that. How many times you go to church. You're still going to be broke spiritually. And you have to go to God and say, hey, God, I need you. I need you to save me. I just need you. And God says, hey, theirs is the kingdom. So what's your attitude when it comes to this? Do you see yourself as spiritually poor? It's like, it reminds me, like I went to Vegas. One time we did a mission trip to the Mojave Valley, so we flew into Vegas, and then we flew out of Vegas. And so when we flew into Vegas, flying out of Vegas, we had all these bottles of water. It's the desert, so everybody needs water and things like that. And we had some food left over and things like that. And so we found a couple homeless guys, and we went to this one homeless guy and said, like, hey, man, would you like all this water? Would you like this food? Would you like all this stuff? And the homeless guy just straight up looked at us like, no. I mean, get out of here, man. And started cussing us out. I need money. I'm like, okay, let me go to another homeless guy. We found this other homeless guy. It's like, hey, man, we got this water. We got this food. Man, would you? He's like, heck no. Man, leave me alone. And we had to go. And we finally found a guy who would take the waters and take the food and things like that. And this is my mentality. I was thinking, these guys are broke, living on the streets, and they don't want water. They don't want food. They don't want that. I kept on thinking, are these guys really broke? Man, how many times do we approach God like that spiritually? Do we approach God with that kind of same mentality? Nope, I'm good spiritually. I'll come to church when I need to. I'll dive into community when I need to. I'll open my Bible up when I need to. But in reality, man, I'm okay. I have enough spirit for today. And that's not the mentality God wants us to have. God says, hey, listen, I approve of the ones that realize that they're poor in spirit, that they need me and always want me and always searching for me and seeking me out. Second one, I promise I'm not going to go as long as I did with that one for all the other ones, right? Second one in verse 4 says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. The ones that are approved here are the ones that know that their sin offends God. That's what happens. When someone hurts your feelings, you mourn, it messes you up. Man, that kind of hurt. And how do we typically forgive somebody? Right? We forgive somebody if we realize it impacted them in some way, somehow. If they come to hey, I'm sorry. I don't even remember what I did. But if they come back with some remorse, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you. I didn't know that hurt your feelings. we're more willing to forgive them, right? This is the idea. Because we know that our sins affect God. Like this is a theme throughout Scripture. Isaiah 59:2. This is not stuff that I'm making up. He says, but your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you so that he does not hear. Like this is the idea that our sins, we sin against God, and God doesn't even want to look at us. Man, we've offended him. Hebrews 10:38. Well, the verse will come up here on the screen here shortly. He says, but my righteous ones shall live by faith, and if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. Like he's not pleased in us when we sin. It's like I mentioned earlier, if someone hurts your feelings and they're like, man, I don't even know what they're upset about. That's not the right attitude to have. God says, no. I want them to realize that their sin hurts me. Not that it affects God, like God's going to be like crying and that's how we get rain. Like it's not like that at all. But our sin breaks our Lord's heart. And do we feel bad? It's like in Japan, like me and my wife, I made a joke towards her one night at dinner, and it turned into a big fight. It became a big fight, made it awkward for some individuals there at the table. And then finally, like that night, I was like, yo, like, babe, I didn't know like that hurt your feelings so bad. I'm really, really sorry. Like I asked for forgiveness. I felt really, really bad. That's the mentality we are to have with God. Like we mourn because it breaks God's heart. When's the last time that you sinned and it really messed with you spiritually and said, man, I feel wrong. And you're there, you're at the altar, you're worshiping, you're crying, saying, God, forgive me of my sins. I hate that I continue to walk in darkness. God, help me walk in the light. When's the last time that you were that heartbroken over your sin? He says next, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. I want you to understand this idea that meekness equals gentleness. Let me kind of break this down. The idea of meekness in the original language is this idea of a stallion, of a horse that has a lot of power, has a lot of strength, right? But it's under control. It's been broken, and the person riding the horse can control that horse each and every single way. It's power under control. It's gentleness. So this person comes from the understanding that they know how God sees them, how God views them. They see themselves as God sees them. And this will show up in their relationships. They'll be gentle in the way they interact with somebody. That they won't come in kind of mean-spirited, or when somebody criticizes them like, hey, man, how dare you say things like no, they realize like they're a sinner, but they have been redeemed by God, that they will come and interact with others in such a gentleness. They don't feel like they have it all together. They don't feel like their ways are better than everybody's, but they begin to act in such a gentle way with others. So here's the thing. Are you gentle? Are you meek? Because this person knows who they are before God, and they're okay with that. They're not going to go try to be better than everybody else and communicate like, listen, I'm better than you. And again, this is many times, it's not the words they say, it's their attitude. It's the attitude that they display. It's the attitude that they begin to show towards others. This person, not saying that they don't establish their plans, that they don't make goals, but they're not trying to stab somebody's throat, trying to climb the corporate ladder. They show kindness. They show gentleness. They don't try to overrule everybody else, but they understand that God is ultimately the decider of their future. And what is that future? He says it right here. They shall inherit the earth with him. Are you gentle? Are you meek? Next is this. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Here's the thing. Not that long ago, I got really, really sick. Didn't know what was up. And the way we found out that I was not doing good is that I just wasn't hungry. Now, I'm a big dude, right? Like you can kind of see I got a belly on me, right? I stay hungry. Jim Gaffigan is a comedian, and I really relate to him when he said, I stay hungry. I finish eating at a buffet, and I walk out saying, man, I'm still hungry. Like, that's me, right? I feel that. And all of a sudden, when I'm not hungry, I'm like, yo, like, this isn't right. Like, I don't feel good. What's wrong? I'm just not hungry. That's kind of a symptom to be able to say, hey, you know what? If this person's not hungry, probably something is not right with them. Here's my question. Do you hunger for God? Do you hunger for God? And here's the test. Here's an easy test to find out if you hunger for God or not. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you reach for? Do you reach for your word? Do you reach for the Bible? Do you reach like, hey, I need to pray to the Lord? Like, what's the first thing, what's your first reaction? Is it those things? Or is it like, okay, let me grab my phone. Oh, I wouldn't wear that. What's your reaction when you wake up in the morning? If you don't wake up hungry, then there's a problem with you. And the Beatitudes has to be more than just lip service. This is the idea of the Beatitudes, is trying to move past this like, oh, I love Jesus. It's moving past the lip service like I go to church sometimes. It's trying to move past the lip service, but it's trying to show you where you're at in your heart. And hunger, that's the thing about hunger. You can't fake hunger. I don't know if you've ever been to a wedding and let's say you go to the wedding and you forget to eat lunch, right? And it's a dinner wedding, right? And like someone's growling and you're looking like, is that person, right? And you're rolling your eyes, pointing to your guest. And then the moment the wedding's over, you're like beeline it straight to the hors d'oeuvres, right? You load up the plate, the cheese is falling out, grapes are falling all over the place, right? Maybe that's just me, right? like you're trying to hurry up and eat, right? Because you're hungry. You can't fake hunger. And if you don't eat, you're going to start eating something else. Like you're going to eat something because you're hungry. You need food. You desire food. And that's the thing. The more you separate from physical food, right? Like the longer and longer I stay away from physical food, the more and more I'm going to want it. Keep me away from Chick-fil-A for a week. I bet you by that next week, I'm dying for it. That's the same thing spiritually. The moment you separate and you're like, I need that word. I'm hungry for that word. I want the word. I want to pray. I want to be in Christian fellowship. Like I hunger for God. I want God. Then you know that you're hungering for the right things. And as children of God, we have to have that desire. We have to hunger. And it has to be more than words. He said, blessed are the ones who are. Not the ones who think that they are or say that they are. So we have the desire to hear from him and to eat at his table and not get lost on our phones. And that's so hard to do. Now we're going to make a shift. The rest of the Beatitudes are now aimed towards our fellow man. Like these Beatitudes that we just mentioned are aimed towards God. Now the other ones here are going to be aimed towards our relationships. So the first ones are vertical. The next ones are going to be horizontal. He said, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Show mercy to the ones that are hurting. When you see someone in need, how quick are we going to respond? That's what the early church was known for. The early church was known for creating this wonderful invention that we still have today, the hospital. They would see people that were hurting. They would take them in and try to find ways that they could heal them and take care of them. The orphanages, they would see children in need and they'd be like, how do we begin to take care of these babies? I don't know. Let's just put them all together and let's feed them and let's watch over them and let's adopt them into our homes. They would see someone in need and they would step in and help. Here's the question. When's the last time you helped someone in need? When's the last time you helped someone in need? Not someone's like, yeah, you know what, I could pay someone to do it, but come over, let's just hang out. No, truly help someone in need. Because here's the thing, I struggle to remember, when's the last time I helped someone in need? When's the last time you helped someone that was in desperate need? And we do that, and when we do that, we'll receive mercy. Because our God looks at us, and we're in need spiritually, and he gives to us. Next is blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Here's pretty simple. It's don't live a fake life. Be true to who you are. Man, you could literally have a sermon series on just this one alone, because we live in the social media age, right? Where we just want to portray that our lives are perfect and wonderful. And then what do? We portray that lifestyle, and then we're in our worst state ever. Like I mentioned last week, there was that young lady, track star, seemed like she had it all together. And then what ended up happening? Her life was completely miserable, that no one had any idea that she was struggling. Man, who are you? Who do you say you are? Is that truly who you are? It reminds me of a time, for example, that we did a mission trip to Boston, and we'd basically evangelize all over Harvard Square. And we'd have all these different ways we'd evangelize to people. Again, Harvard's known for intellectualism, but if anything, it's really like post-Christian. Christianity's kind of left Boston area. Some people even say it's pre-Christian. A lot of people don't even know about God. So we would just go there and just talk about people about Jesus. And one ways that we would kind of engage with people is that we'd have this sign that said, need prayer. Just simple question, need prayer. And we would hold it up in the middle of the square and people would come up to us and pray. Now we had this one guy, a friend of mine, this homeboy could never be found. We'd be out sharing. It'd be like we would take turns doing the need prayer sign and you could never find this cat. We had no idea where he was at. Many times he was in an ice cream shop. Other times he was in a bookstore. Other times he was at a restaurant. Like we could never find him other than him just hanging out. And at the very end, we would go down to the bottom and we would wait for our bus so we can go to the church that we stayed the night at. And as we're waiting for a bus, I remember he said, hey man, give me that need prayer sign. And he grabbed the need prayer sign. He sat down, he put his hoodie on, and he posed, kind of looking away, holding the need prayer sign. And he took a picture. And then he posted it. He said, need prayer? He's like, man, I'm just engaging and sharing with the people in Boston. And I had to talk to him later about that. It's like, yo, bro, like, why were you faking that? Not once did you actually hold the sign out in real life. Not once would that really, like, why did you have to communicate that to the whole entire world? I actually was going to get the picture and like blur his face out and show it, but he had taken it down, like right after we had that conversation. Are you who you say you are? No fakes. Got to be true to who you are. That's why I think sometimes, especially in this place, I think it's okay to come in here and not be okay. I think it's okay. This is a safe place. And we're going to try to build this place out to be a safe place where you can come in and people ask you, hey, how are you? It's okay to be like, hey, I'm not okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I know people abuse that. But this should be a safe place that when you're really not okay, you can say, hey, I'm not okay. And can you pray for me? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Next one is this. Blessed are the peacemakers, verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons and daughters of God. Now we live, like I mentioned last week, we live in a culture nowadays that is more divided than ever. People fight over every single little thing. But if you're called a son or daughter of God, you need to be a peacemaker. Why? Because we worship the God of peace. He is a God of peace. So we walk in as people of peace. Does that mean us here in this room? Absolutely. If we don't like people in this room, right, we may just kind of look at them side-eye and like, and then kind of go about our merry way. No, we're supposed to approach them saying, hey, listen, there's some things here that are not right between us. Hey, I'm sorry for whatever I've done. Man, can you forgive me? And can you begin to walk as brothers and sisters in Christ? Like that's our goal. We need to do that. But I also believe this passage, what Jesus is also talking about, is people that don't necessarily agree with you or like the things that you do and maybe just hate you because of your association and affiliation with Jesus. And we're supposed to be peacemakers with them as well. It reminds me of my buddy. He worked at Starbucks and he had a coworker. She was a lesbian and really hated Christians. Just didn't like them, wasn't cool with them. And typically spoke really ill will. And so my buddy said, hey, like, the last thing she needs is someone to show hate towards her. And so he got all his other coworkers that were Christians, and they just kind of said, hey, can we just be kind to her and show her kindness and love on her? And they all said, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Well, she was actually a pretty bad employee, did a lot of things that just the Starbucks did not like, and they ended up firing her. And so on her last day, she brought my buddy and all the friends that he had gathered together, all the Christians gathered together and said, hey, I just want to thank y'all. Like, man, people were so miserable towards me. They treated me poorly and bad. He goes, y'all were the only guys who actually cared about me. Little did she know that every single person in that circle was a Christian. She had talked bad about them, about Christians and how bad Christians were. And instead, the Christians kind of fighting back, they loved her and cared for her. We are to show peace to people who may not necessarily show us peace. We are to love people who may not necessarily love us. If you love drama, you got to examine yourself. If you love those kind of Christian voices that kind of spew out hate, you got to examine yourself. Why do you like to listen to those guys? And you got to examine your heart. got to examine yourself. Why do you like wrath? You like fighting? Or are you a person of peace? Are you a person who pursues peace? Why? Because our God has shown us peace. Next thing is this. He said, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Like I mentioned earlier, we're peacemakers, but that does not mean that people are going to like us. She still spoke bad about my friends. And they stood strong and said, hey, we're going to show peace. But people will persecute us for what we believe. It may not necessarily be the culture, and that's how typically people are kind of going out about it right now. But it may just be people who just don't like Christians in general. It could be another religion. It could be so many different things. But here's the thing. Persecution is the testing ground for your faith. And it will show if you really follow Jesus or not. If you follow Jesus because you truly love him, it will show. If you follow Jesus because you like Jesus' things, that's going to show after a while. So do you follow Jesus because you love him? This reminds me of a TikTok I watch. It's a 3-parter. It's a guy. He was eating at Waffle House and he was dressed up in his kind of military attire. And this guy walks in. He begins to record. He's like, yo, wait a minute. Like he's like, where were you stationed at? He's the guy's telling us some things like, okay, cool. Like, are you like, what branch of the military? And then he's beginning to realize the guy's beginning to fumble. And he realized like, yo, I got you. I busted you. And he's like, no. Like, dude, like your pants don't match your boots and your boots doesn't match your shirt. And come to find out this guy was there at the Waffle House dressed in that gear because he just wanted the military discount. And so by the end of the video, this guy straight up telling them, like, yo, like, take away the military discount and charge him the full price. Like this guy doesn't get the discount. This guy doesn't get the privileges. This guy doesn't get to dress in our attire. And he starts telling them, take that clothes off in the middle of the Waffle House. He's telling that guy to take his clothes off because he doesn't deserve to wear those garments. Persecution does that to us. It proves it's a testing ground. Are we really Christ followers or not? Are we really the ones that have done the time, that we were stationed in certain places spiritually, right? Like you just can't get to the point where you're at the cross, right, about to be crucified, and look at the cross and be like, never mind, I'm going this way. You can't do that. You will be persecuted for righteousness' sake. And Jesus is saying, hey, you are blessed. Persecution may be the way you earn your stripes. But here's the thing. All these Beatitudes, they're not separate. You can't say like, oh, I'm really good at being a peacemaker. But you know, this hunger for righteousness, I don't think that's me. Like all these come together. They're all part of the whole. They all come together. You just can't take one part and leave the others. You have to bring them all in and live all of them out. And that's the idea that Jesus is communicating. But why? Why are we to live all these out? And that's regarding point number 2, the blessed purpose of the Beatitudes. This is what we're about to tackle. Jesus gets there and he says this. He goes, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. Like, remember when people used to say salty? Like, oh, you're just salty. Remember that? Right? Like, all right, this is the idea that he's wanting to communicate to us. Like, we need to be salty. Salt was extremely important. One ancient Jewish writer listed salt as one of the basic necessities of life. An ancient Roman official commented, there is nothing more useful than salt and sunshine. Funny that we're going to tackle both of those things here tonight. But salt was extremely important. It helped meat from decaying. It helped meat from going bad. You would have to salt a piece of meat so it could last a long time. Christians are on this earth to stop it from decaying. We're to stop evil from taking over. This is why it's so important for Christians to fight injustices. When we see an injustice happen, this is important for us to begin to rise up against that. Because listen, there's a lot of people who do not know Jesus. And we're called to step up, to step in and help others out. because that gives us an opportunity to share our message. This is Jesus. This is who he is. We are to be salt, right? To fight against the evil and decay that's in our world. Now, can salt really lose its saltiness? No, and it isn't that Jesus is really bad at science or anything like that. But what would happen in this day and age is that salt was typically collected, right? It's typically collected around limestone, more than likely was collected around limestone. And so limestone, throughout time, with enough time, with water and things like that, comes off and rolls off as white. And so when they would collect salt and kind of scrape and get the salt together, if you've never seen the process, you should watch it. It's a fun YouTube view on a night that you can't go to sleep. And they kind of scrape over and over and over again, and they would collect it, let it dry out and things like that, and it all mixed together. And so typically the limestone, because they would scrape it, would be in the very bottom, right? You would get the salt from the top, you would salt your meat, and you would cure everything like that. But towards the bottom, it would be mostly limestone. And that stuff, when you begin to put on meat and things like that, it would begin to go bad. It wouldn't taste salty anymore. It's just impurities that began to slip in that looked like salt, but really wasn't salt. It looked like salt, but really wasn't salt. Same thing spiritually. The person who says that they're a Christian, but isn't living out the Beatitudes, what are they? They're these impurities. They're not truly Christian. We as Christians are to fight against evil and stop the earth from decaying. Why? Because there's still so many people who have not heard Jesus, that if Jesus came back right now, like I get it, people like talk about the end times and things like that, and we're just stuck on TikTok and seeing all this things happening around the world, like, man, this world's going to end at any point, any time. But man, we are to fight against that, because if Jesus did come, there'd be so many people lost. But the ones that don't want to push back evil, and they're probably not Christian. You may not think in sports or in war, but there's a saying in sports and in war, the best offense is having a good defense. And that's who we are. We're to be salt, to help the world from decaying. But verse 14 breaks it down like this. Here's the offense now. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Light typically would be a little lamp. You can see them in museums. They'd be like this big. And it would hold a little oil, right? And you would light it up, and you would literally put it, like when they start put it under a basket, right? Like always saying that song as a kid, like, how do you put a light? Like I'm thinking of big old like chandelier. Like how do you put that? Like, no, it'd be a little thing like this. You could easily put it on a table, put a basket over it, and burn the basket, right? But it'll typically put it out. You could easily hide that thing. But it's saying, no. You put that little thing and you let it shine. And a little light goes a long way in darkness. We did another mission trip to the Mojave Valley. Like I mentioned, we flew into Vegas, right? And the nearest neighbor was like 5 miles away. There was no lights down the road. And we stayed at this little church. And one day we're like, hey, we're in the church. No one's around. Like, let's play sardines, right? And so there was this one hallway that we went down. They had these like classrooms where they did all the kids ministry stuff that had windows to the outside. But when you would walk down that hallway, you had no light. Like no light whatsoever. There was no light outside. There was no light inside. And so all you heard was voices. Like I remember not being able to see my hand like right here, right in front of me. It was insane. It was so dark. It was so dark. It was pitch black. We were tripping over each other. We were hurting each other, right? Because we could not see what was in front of us. Light is extremely important in dark areas. And we are to be that. We're to be light. We're to bring the light in very dark areas. When we see some injustices or we're seeing some morality decay, right? We come in and we are the light. And here's the thing. We're not enforcing our morality on others. That's not our goal. We just live out our morality and let that shine and show the whole entire world, hey, listen, this way is superior than this other way. And time again, studies on Christians that actually read the Word, study the Word, tend to be less depressed, have more joy, right? Like all the statistics, like this way is way superior. We don't have to enforce it. We just have to live it out, truly live it out. And the world's saying, hey, I want what they're having. That's this idea of the light. We begin to shine and others begin to see. It's us bringing the message of Jesus and letting Jesus change people. We shine the light of Jesus. And here's the thing. Are we going to be a church that's going to do that? Are we going to be a place that's going to do that? Due to time, I'm going to kind of condense the story, but I remember working at my old church when I was just an intern, and I was in a closet that was my office. Literally it was like supply and cleaning closet. So many times I'd be working in the broom and everything would be right. So the broom would hit me across the head because the person didn't put it up right and things like that. But I would work away. And I remember I would go in on Saturdays. I worked a full-time job and did this internship so I could try to, earn my way up. And so I would come in Saturday really early and try to work and try to leave by midday to kind of do my homework and things like that and go hang out with friends and stuff. And so I remember showing up working, and I remember hearing this banging and this crying in the hallway. I'm like, man, what is that noise? And I'd continue to work and I'd hear this banging and this kind of crying. So I'm like, man, something's up. So I run out and I see this lady just in tears, weeping. She had just found out that her husband had been cheating on her. Her son was special needs, and she had no place to go. She had just moved into an area and found all that out. And said the only place she knew to go was the church. That's the only place she knew that if I'm going to find hope, it has to be the church. So I prayed for her, ministered to her, and helped, locate her with some good women and things like that. Are we that place? Like, is that our reputation around the area? And as we're just starting this collective thing out, as people are going out, like, will people know, like, hey, I can go to this place for hope. I can go for this place for light. So here's the thing with the Beatitudes. Like, are we going to live them out or not? Like, there's no in between. There's like, I'm going to give it a good try. Like, are we about it or not? I shared this story 2 years ago when I spoke at Breaking Free. So maybe some of y'all remember it if you were there at Breaking Free 2 years ago. But I went to get, had to get your, your state inspection and tags from the tax office. And so I went to the tax office and went in, did my business and got my tax to put on my car. And then typically outside the tax office, there'd be individuals there that I don't know, there'd be Jehovah's Witnesses sometimes, other times people protesting and things like that. And so one time people were protesting the president. Man, it's so long ago. I'm so old. I've lived through so many different presidents. I don't have to tell you which president it was. It could be either one that you like or hate. It doesn't matter. The point is that they were protesting a president. They put a Hitler mustache. And listen, that can apply to every single president in my lifetime. So y'all guys can decide and make up the president that you want, right? And so they had a Hitler mustache on them, and they had a big old sign saying, impeach the president. Impeach the president. Sign the petition today. And I remember as you can see the picture over here, like on this side, I remember seeing this kind of black car, and it gets to a stop sign. And literally, I guess they look both ways and they see that sign. And so they just kind of gun it. Gas starts smoking, peeling out, going around, drive around, and they pull in right into those driveways, take up 2 spots. And this little blonde girl comes out and she goes, I hate that guy. He's like, I don't like him. He's ruining our country. Like, give me the petition. I'll sign any petition you want. Give it to me here. Like, I'll sign it. I'm done. Anything we need to do to remove them, I'm going to remove them. Anything you need, I'm willing to do. So the guy, they're all scurrying, getting pins and things like that, and they hand it to her, like, yes, ma'am. Like, and she's like, I got friends that we can totally do this thing. And so like, yes, ma'am, that's totally great. So can you write your name, write your email very clearly, and then we're going to send you a donation page. This is actually just to gather up interest, to find out who's willing to jump on board with us and willing to start funding us, because this is going to be a long, lengthy process. We got to get lawyers. We got to look at cases and try to do all these different things to sue, to try to remove them from office. She goes, oh, I got to give money? They're like, yes, like this is the reason why we're doing this. Like, nah, I'm good. And she just drops the petition thing, turns around, gets in her car, reverses, and just drives away. And just drove away. She said she was all about it. Drove, broke laws, and there was cops all over the place. The jailhouse is right there. She broke all sorts of laws, did all this thing to say, listen, I'm committed. I don't want this guy. But when it came down to it, she really wasn't. When it came down to it, And she had to really put her money where her mouth is, actually put her wallet where her mouth is. She said, nah, I'm not about it. I believe so many Christians are like that. I love Jesus. I'm all about Jesus. Perfect. Be a peacemaker. Nah, I'm good. Drops everything, gets in the car and drives away. Mourn over your sin. Nah, I'm good. I like my sin. I like what I do in the privacy of my bedroom that no one sees. I'm fine. Hunger. Nah, like listen, I got to catch up on my TikToks that I missed last night. I got to see what's happening. The Beatitudes, we are to live them out, and it shows the world that we belong to Jesus. So where are you? So this is our time to respond. This is our time to respond in worship. We're going to have one more song. And I really just want you to take this moment, like even if you have to open up your word, open up your Bible, and just look over the Beatitudes and just kind of go through them. Kind of do a check in your heart. Begin to ask yourself the questions. Man, do I mourn over my sin? Am I a peacemaker? Am I poor in spirit? Am I meek? Am I merciful? And if you're not, here's the wonderful and beautiful thing of the cross. Like, it's an invitation to go back to it. It's an invitation to say, hey, listen, you're not those things, and that's okay. But God still loves you and accepts you anyway. So let's pray. I know we went a little long, but with eyes closed and heads bowed. If you feel like that resonated with you tonight, any of these Beatitudes, I just really want you tonight, maybe not even stand up and worship. Just kind of have your hands out and say, God, I want to be whatever that Beatitude is. Like I mentioned in the very beginning, you need God to live these out. And you're just going to ask God to do that in your life. So God, I pray that you be with each and every single individual here tonight. I pray that these Beatitudes, as difficult as they may sound sometimes, I know as I was studying, it was just a gut check for me. God, we know that we need you. And when we fail, there's grace. God, that you don't want perfection. That, God, you just are asking for progress. So God, I pray that you be with each and every single one of us. God, may we progress towards you, run towards you, knowing that you approve of us because of what your Son did for us on the cross. We love you and we thank you. And all these things we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ, we do pray. Amen.